welcome back to my channel. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. So I had a little bit of a break. No, I've been very busy, to be honest. Work is working me at the moment. Okay. Also, I went to see Olivia Rodrigo. Oh my god! I loved it. I loved it so much. I think probably, look, it might be my favourite concert I've been to, which is saying a lot because I've seen Ariana Grande and I love Ariana so much. Being with her since the Victoria stage, do you know what I mean? But this concert, like, the energy and just, like, everything about it, I loved it. I think, obviously, Olivia is, like, my age, so the music is so relatable, but just, it was such a good time, such a good day. I loved it, and it was just so nice being able to just be a girl for like 2 hours. It was the nicest thing ever. But yeah, hope you're doing very, very well. I've kind of missed filming. I've been away for like 10 days, but I'm like, wow, like we're gonna get straight back into it today, and we are gonna be talking about kind of like the dropped storylines of Pretty Little Liars. There's two, I think, in here, which I am kind of happy they dropped. But the rest of these storylines, I feel like they should have carried on and continued because the dropped aspect of it kind of ruined where we were going with it. So I've written some down. Guys, I've written them in a notebook. I'm basically a book writer at this point. We're just going to jump straight in. My first one is the NAT Club. I've spoken about the NAT Club so many times before because it's a thing that really annoys me because, oh yeah, to give you context, by the way, I want you to keep this statement in mind kind of through the video because I feel like it's something that will be repeated over and over again. But I obviously give constructive criticism to the writing when it's needed, or, you know, when I would change some things or just rewrite a completely different section of the show. But I also like to give credit when it's due. And I think the Pretty Little Liars writers, every single time they had to write to build up to something, they were so good. Like, they knew how to write mystery, and building up to the conclusion was always so good. And I always felt very tense. I loved the mystery. I was like, this is so cool. Like, I'm loving it. But it was ultimately just the conclusion that really let them down. Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole Charles De Laurentiis thing, I loved the lead up to it. I loved it so much. Like, it was some of my favorite time in the show, like the dollhouse and the whole thing of like Charles is someone who we know and things like that. I really enjoyed it, but it's just the ultimate conclusion of it which I think they lack in, and I feel like this happens basically throughout the entire show. I love the hype, the build up, the tension, it's there, but when you get to the final point, it's like, oh, that's a bit of a, do you know what I mean? And I feel like the NAT Club, we never really got a conclusion with the NAT Club because they did drop it, but the NAT Club was really good at building this hype up and building this tension up, and, you know, slowly we would find out what it was, who was involved, who made it, who was like the main, you know, people in the group, and, you know, the suspicion regarding kind of what it had to do with Alison's disappearance and things like that. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really good. Obviously the NAT Club started with Jason, but Ian and Garrett kind of took over and made it like this really creepy thing. But the whole build up and like the whole concept of the NAT Club is really good. It's kind of like the blueprint for A, and where the girls first kind of like was spied on and things like that. So I feel like the actual concept is something that I found really good in terms of like, this is like, wow, this is like a lot, do you know what I mean? But then it's kind of like, it just kind of got dropped out of nowhere. There was like a period of time in the show as well where all of the members were either dying off or were being targeted, and I ate that up. Like, when Ian died, Garrett died, people were going after Jenna, the Jason in the elevator thing, like, the members were being targeted. Wow. No, because I did eat that up. I'm so sorry. Like, I loved it, like, so much. And it really felt like, right, A is like taking out these members, or maybe like another person is taking out these members to hide something. Maybe they killed Alison or something like that. Would have been really, really cool. But I also think implementing the NAT Club, not just within the girls, but throughout the entire town of Rosewood would have been really cool to do. So not only are the girls being spied on, but the residents of Rosewood are being spied on. And that's where like all the secrets get kind of revealed and things like that. But ultimately, I think after Ian's death, really, maybe Garrett's death as well, the NAT Club kind of got dropped and we never really came back to it. But I feel like they had a really good thing there, and they could have maybe come to a conclusion on it, really, or kind of continued it maybe a little bit down the line, because that leads me on to kind of Melissa's input and Jenna's input. I would like to know what input Melissa and Jenna had into it as well. That got dropped as well. We saw Melissa kind of like, you know, in that video where she's like, where's Alison? Like, we see her and we're like, wow, Melissa's getting involved here. And she's also involved with like all the members at some point as well. So I'd like to know Melissa's input too. I think Jenna, in my conclusion, didn't really have much to do with the NAT Club, and just kind of went because like Garrett was there and she was with Garrett at the time. So that's my kind of conclusion with Jenna, but like we don't know because it got dropped. So yeah, that's my whole take on the NAT Club. I've done a whole video on the NAT Club if you'd like to check it out, but I find that aspect of the show really, really interesting. Ren being shady. When I tell you this was like one of my favorite parts of the show, I am a massive Arya is A stan. I think she should have been A. I saw an edit the other day. Lucy Hale was in another film or something, and they used clips from there as like an A reveal. And oh my god, the way it should have happened, I'm so sorry. But I'm also an even bigger Ren should have been Charles / A stan. I think Ren being Charles would have made so much sense, and kind of would have, you know, with CeCe, there's kind of like, not doubt, but kind of like questions about so many different things. It's like, well, you know, things 100% don't really make sense. It's like, don't know the vibes here. I feel like if Ren was A, the confusion would have been much less, and I think it just makes so much sense for him to be A, or to be Charles, sorry. But there was a whole period of the show, season 3 and 4, where Ren was being really, really shady, and like I said, going back to my statement earlier about the writers, they were writing so well about the shadiness and leading up to, oh, what is this gonna be? But ultimately the shadiness and the tension kind of came to nothing, and I was really let down by it. I think in hindsight we're supposed to look back and be like, yeah, well, he was working with Alex, but at the time what I'm talking about, I think on the timeline, like, he wasn't. So the shadiness wasn't really validated or like given a reason why, because they dropped it. But I really enjoyed kind of like his kind of like involvement in Radley, the whole Eddie Lamb stuff, which I will get onto. But he had personal beef with Eddie Lamb, and then Eddie Lamb disappeared. The whole thing with him giving CeCe the visitor passes. There's the scene where he's colouring in the red coat. Like, yes, I love it. It was so good. I really, really ate this up as well. I loved it so much. I'm so sorry. Like, this was such a good time in the show for me, and I think Ren being a villain would have been so cool. It's like, as well, because he's British, I'm not saying we're all evil, you know, but there was like aspects of A which like they tried to show like some Britishness within it to kind of like hint at Ren being Charles or A. I am a believer in the thing where they did change who A was going to be, because I think the way that things are set up, I think it was supposed to be Ren or someone else. Like, I don't mind CeCe being Charles / A, but I just think there's other things that they were setting up which I think they were aiming towards. So I am a believer that they did change it. However, I just really enjoyed Ren being shady, and I'm really annoyed that they just kind of like dropped it. You know? So that leads me on to the whole Eddie Lamb stuff. Eddie Lamb is very popular here within this community because of kind of what he said and did in like the few episodes that we had him. Obviously the main things are he had beef with Ren. He said that Ren led to a lot of security issues, and then after that he literally just fell off the face of the earth and went missing. And then the whole thing with Arya where he was like, do I recognize you from somewhere? That I am so annoyed they didn't do anything with that, because I think the setup of both of them, whether that was Arya did have some time in Radley, maybe the one year that she was in Iceland, she was actually in Radley, or obviously Ren being Charles, I think it would have set up really, really well, but they quickly dropped Eddie, which was very annoying. Cape May as well. So going back to my earlier statement about the writers knowing how to build up to something, they very much focused on Cape May because Alison had like a secret boyfriend there, and it was all like, oh my god, who is it? She had a pregnancy scare with this guy. Then we find out it's Wilden. It's like, oh my god. But I feel like after we find out it's Wilden, not much really happens from it, and not much really comes from it. Like, we find out who it is, and it's like, okay, now let's move on. Do you know what I mean? Like, the build-up was really, really good. I loved it. And kind of like, you know, finding out, oh my god, who is it? Like, and then when you find out it's Wilden, who already is quite corrupt, it's like, wow, okay, like, this guy needs to find a proper job. Get a proper job, do you know what I mean? Like, not to be rude, not to sound rude, but, like, get a life. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like, yeah, it kind of amounted to nothing really. Like, nothing really came from it. And I wasn't, like, I don't know. I feel like it was such a big thing. And then we got to the conclusion of who it was. And then it was like, right, move on. What's next on the agenda? Do you know what I mean? Like, Wilden, like, died a while after that. And there was a whole thing about Wilden being a suspect, whatever. But it just felt like any other suspect that they suspect any other time on the show. It didn't really feel like, right, things were at stake here. Like, he literally had a relationship with an underage girl and had a pregnancy scare with her, and I feel like they didn't really make enough fuss about that, if that makes any sense. Melissa and CeCe the night that Alison went missing. Now, I guess this is unanswered, but the way they answered it, I'm kind of verging it on the dropped aspect, because we are told that Jason sees Melissa and CeCe the night that Alison went missing, but then I think it's Spencer who confronts CeCe, and CeCe's like, oh no, like, he must have saw something else. Let's not drop that, please, because I feel like that has really, really big significance, because I feel like if it happened, like, I feel like it actually would have made more sense for it to have happened. Maybe CeCe was actually Bethany, or Bethany and CeCe were like maybe twins or something like that, and Melissa had obviously killed Bethany, so there was that whole thing. I feel like they could have worked with that a little bit more. I just obviously come to the conclusion that Jason was high and just saw something else that like wasn't that. That's just my conclusion that comes from it. But I feel like we could have worked with it, and we could have tied it in a bit more, whether that's tying it into what CeCe did that night, or whether what Melissa did that night to Bethany. We could have done more. I feel. The ghost child thing. Now, I loved the Halloween episodes, do not get me wrong, I loved it. But I feel like the inclusion of, I can't remember what season this happened, but you know when Ashley is like the only person who can see the ghost child and things like that, I feel like this was very out of place, and could have either been continued or just not used at all, because I love the Halloween episodes very, very much, but at the end of the day, Pretty Little Liars is not a supernatural show. It's not. It's a realistic show. The supernatural aspects, you need to leave it to Ravenswood or things like that. So I feel like including this ghost child who we had heard about before through like Alison's stories and things like that, and having it as a real life thing that only Ashley can see, and then just dropping it after that was actually very, very weird. I get what they were trying to do because it was a Halloween episode. It was like, oh, spooky, whatever. But you need to be realistic about a show like Pretty Little Liars, and if you're including something like this, I'm going to assume that it means something. I guess, obviously, it kind of hints at twins being a reoccurring thing coming through the show, but like the fact that only Ashley could see her, why was it Ashley? Why could no one else kind of like see her? I remember it led to a lot of theories about Hannah, and maybe Hannah has a twin or something like that. Um, but yeah, I feel like that inclusion was a bit weird. I feel like we should just not include that or like carry it on somehow. Because if you wanted to do something supernatural like that, you leave it to a spin-off or something like that, not a show like Pretty Little Liars where it's not really a supernatural show. It has like supernatural things with like Mrs. Grunwald and things like that, but it's not a supernatural show. So yeah, I don't really get that, really. The deliberate parallels between Maya and Alison, specifically how their bodies were both found. I feel like there was a lot of parallels with them. Obviously, Maya was living in the De Laurentiis' house. She had a relationship with Emily, and the way that she died, like, it's literally direct parallels. And my issue is, okay, if you're going to have a parallel with kind of the main character of the show and what the whole mystery of the show is surrounding, then you can't drop that and make Maya's death have nothing to do with Alison or anything like that. I rewrote Maya's death a few months ago or weeks ago maybe. I don't know. I don't know what time is anymore. Time doesn't exist for me nowadays. But I said that I would have included Maya's death with kind of maybe Maya found out Alison was alive and Alison got someone to kill her, or A killed Maya just like out of spite or something like that, because then it would link to the parallels that the writers were doing between Alison and Maya. But I feel like they just dropped that completely. I don't know whether they didn't know what happened to Maya when they wrote that in, like whether they hadn't planned her death yet. But Maya's whole death to me is still very kind of confusing, to be honest. And it does strike me as like they did it, and then when they came to write what actually happened, they were like, oh, what do we do now? Do you know what I mean? And like that's no disrespect, but it's just like the planning needs to be like a bit better. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like, yeah, if you do these direct parallels, but then you have the conclusion of it not really linked to the parallels that you're doing, and you're like you've dropped that whole thing, I think is very like I'm not vibing with it. Alison's group of friends, when she came back, I really thought they were going to go down the route of like Alison has a new group and this group kind of battle with the liars, and Alison kind of reclaims, you know, being like a leader of a group again or something like that. But Alison's group of friends didn't really last long. They went to, I can't remember whether it was like a homecoming or a prom or whatever like that was. But like they went to that, and then after that it was like nothing. I would have liked if there was like, yeah, that battle of Alison trying to reclaim the power of being a leader again, but maybe finding difficulty in it. Maybe the girls are like fighting back against her. I think we could have done more with that, but that was quickly dropped. Ezra's book. Now, I don't know whether this is me being nosy, but I feel like we could have worked more with Ezra's book. I feel like Ezra's book got dropped quite quickly after the reveal of it, to be honest. Like I said, going back to my statement, the lead up to the book and like the reveal was really good. Like when we found like Ezra's lair and we, you know, thought he was A, and when Ezra had that like mask in the Halloween episode, whatever, so good. I lived for it. I loved it so much. And even like the reveal of the book I think was really good. Like it was very creepy, like in the forest, like that was really, really good. But then the aftermath of it I think fell quite short, because like Ezra got shot soon after that and then told them who A was at that point. And then after that I feel like the consequences of his book were not what they could have been and fell a bit short, and I think they kind of dropped that because obviously they wanted Ezra and Arya to be together no matter what, so I think they had to quickly kind of drop the book and like kind of get them somewhat happy. There were obviously consequences, like things did happen, but I feel like the magnitude of the book, like it could have been a lot more than what it was. Like it just, I feel like it kind of felt a bit short for me. But also I would have liked to know more aspects of the book. I think Ezra came to the conclusion that Jessica de Laurentiis was I would have liked to have known why did he think that. I think that could have been really interesting to find out. I just love Jessica de Laurentiis, to be honest. No, not love morally. Let's not get this sick and twisted. She's a good villain. I think she's like the ultimate puppet master of Pretty Little Lies. I think she is kind of the ultimate villain. I think she controls the show, and I love that about her. I'm sorry, I do. So I would have kind of liked to have known, like, why did he think that? What else did he find out? Things like that. But like it just got dropped and like nothing really came from it. So yeah, this is what I'm glad they did actually drop. The whole Ashley and Byron thing. There was an episode where you like the power cut episode where for this one episode like Byron and Ashley like flirt for an episode. I didn't really get that. Like I didn't really get the chemistry, and then after this episode they never came back to it or never spoke about it again. I'm glad this got dropped. I found this very weird. It was very kind of out of nowhere, and I don't know, I'm very happy that that one got dropped. Ian's actual death. So we never really came to a conclusion about how Ian actually kind of died. We don't know whether it was the actual bell tower incident that happened. We don't know whether he S-worded himself or whether A killed him and staged it as an S-word, because I think I remember his S-word letter was like A text and things like that. So we never really came to a conclusion because they dropped it about like how he actually died. There was a whole mystery about his death and how he died. I think especially after we found out about the letter, it was like, right, there's more to this death than we know. So we still don't know really exactly when he died or how he died. I do think he did die on the bell tower, if I'm being honest. And then A just took the body and wanted to just kind of, I don't know, be creepy with it and stage things with it. That's my conclusion, but we don't know because it got dropped. But I did enjoy that little like mystery, like, oh, how did he actually die? Like there's way more to it, but no, it got dropped, so nothing really came from that in the end. And then lastly for today, the whole storyline about Maya. No, Mona being the fifth liar. There was a period of time on the show where Mona was really written in a way where she was being lined up to become the fifth liar of the group. She would always be with them. She got texts with them. She would help them out. Like she was really included. And then obviously Alison came back, and I think it was a thing of like there's not room for both of them. But like it didn't really get addressed. Like Mona was in the group, and then the next episode she wasn't in the group, and then she was in the group again, and then wasn't in the group again, and like that was the end of that. So that whole thing got dropped, and I don't think it's necessary for me the thing of like I really want her to be in a group, whatever. It was a thing of like one day she was in the group and the next she's not, and like nothing really got addressed about it. It just kind of like happened, and like we went along with it, you know? So that is it from me today. I'm probably missing a whole lot more, but this is just my short list for today. So comment down below the one that you would have loved for them to have carried on a bit longer, or one that I didn't mention. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.